Hello, friends. It is good to be back together again. It is W for Wednesday, and that means that our great friend Peter's with us. And
Good morning, everybody.
the wonderful, the amazing, the one of a kind. She is definitely one of one. Diana Shine, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Thanks, Jed. That was great.
Oh, you guys are in for a treat today. Diana, what are we going to be talking about today with you?
Well, today's lesson is on water, and mostly my lesson is on observing water and really paying close attention to what it is you're seeing, so that we can translate what you're seeing into paint. And I have 9 really specific things about water I want to talk about, and then we'll dive into the demo.
Awesome. That is so great. So it's so fun to see you guys. I don't know. I was having such a good time just going through all the comments there and seeing everybody showing up. I saw,
super
basically
cool.
every state. I also saw Norway. I saw Germany. I know I missed a few countries that I things just happen too fast to see everything. But guys, so glad that you are here. And I want to make this somebody mentioned they had an echo. And if you're having an echo in what you're doing, what probably is happening is that you have the dashboard open and YouTube open at the same time, and they're both playing this. So just close one of them, and you can, if you want to participate in the chat, just make sure you're on YouTube. Anyways, Diana, we're so glad to be here. I know people are going to get a ton out of your presentation. So, so glad, you guys. I'm going to jump into this real quick. I'm going to show you what we're looking at a little bit here and where we are. If you don't know where we are, this is the Acrylic Landscape Workshop and Challenge. We are in the second session today. As you know, we will give away a prize at the kind of towards the end of the session. And we have another session on Friday, which is going to be on atmosphere. And that's going to be another wonderful session you don't want to miss. And then, of course, we have our prize giveaway and celebration on Monday. Today is with Diana, how to paint water. And I just got to ask you guys, who is excited to learn from Diana today? I know that I am always excited. I swear, so many little nuggets and things that are now, I just take them for granted as part of my thinking. When I trace it back, I go, oh, Diana was the one that kind of showed me that. So anyways, who's excited? Yes, I'm excited. Woohoo. So great. So today's session will be about 90 minutes. There'll be instruction, a demonstration, prizes, a Q&A, and want you to know replays are always going to be available through the duration of the workshop. So that kind of sounded weird. Maybe replays will be available through the duration of the workshop, and you can go to the landscapeworkshop.com. It's a very straightforward place to find all the sessions, the replays, the reference photos, and any extra information that you need. So I have a special question for you guys. For those of you who have been paying attention, this might be a little hard, but I'd like to see if anybody knows this. What is the hashtag to use when posting your paintings on social media? I'd love to see this come through. If somebody can call this to mind and type it in the chat right now, because I'm waiting to see. Now there's a little delay here for my chat, but I'm gonna see. Okay, I don't see it yet. Oh, I see it. Oh, Ruhi Art and Craft was the first one I saw. And Debbie, I see Debbie, Shannon. I see a bunch of people got it. Okay, Acrylic Landscape 2023. So yeah, put that in your hashtag when you post it, and then you can also search for that hashtag, see other people's work, and if you want to become friends, follow each other on Instagram or something like that. That's super fun. Also, you can tag us, and again, we'll have a Q&A at the end. But if you have questions during the workshop at any point when the demo is happening or the instructional part, you can always type that in the chat and we will do our best to answer the questions. And a reminder is I'm super proud of you guys for taking the courageous steps forward and being like a lion and saying, hey, I'm going to just do this. I'm going to try. I'm going to put my effort into this, because we all know that creativity does take courage. So good job, everybody. Now, are you ready? I want to see it in the chat. Are you ready? You know what I'm looking for? I'm looking for, yes, I am ready, and I was born ready. So guys, let's go. Here we go. I love it. I love it so much, man. I love it. Oh, I missed it. I missed it. Dang. Okay, look at this, guys. I love it so much. Okay, let's go. Then we're going to turn it over. I'm going to just ask Peter to pull up the video. It's time for Diana, her instruction. Here we go.
I'm going to talk to you for just a few minutes about some keys to painting water. When you look at water, when you see water from different angles, and what water does in different lights. And that will help you make some decisions about your paintings, how you want to simplify, the kind of brush marks you want to use, the kind of colors you choose. So let's get started talking about keys to painting water. One of the common mistakes people make when painting water is they assume that water is always blue. I think the reason we make that assumption is because so often we go to bodies of water on beautiful days when the sun is shining and the sky is blue. Well, that's going to guarantee some blue water. But let's talk about color of water that is beyond the blue. It's like a big mirror, but not a mirror you hold up to your face that directly reflects things side to side. It's a mirror that lays on the ground and reflects everything above it. So if there are trees arching over this mirror, it's not going to be blue. In fact, if there's no blue in the sky, there's not going to be any blue in the water. It also reflects whatever is above it. So in this photo on the right, we can see that the water is reflecting the underside of the bridge, the bottom, and we can't see any of the side of the bridge in the reflection. Over on the left, we can see that our mirror is just reflecting the tops of these trees because there's a big bunch of grasses in the way of the bottoms of the trees, so our mirror doesn't have a chance to reflect those. While talking about these reflections, the smoother the water is, the more accurate the mirror image. We do not see this mountain because the mountain is too far back. It's set too far back to be reflecting in something that's looking straight up. And reflections are no longer mirror-like, but they distort when there's ripples in the water. The more ripples, the more distortion. Let's look at something else reflections do. I'm going to turn this photo to black and white for just a minute. We can already see that the water isn't blue, it's green. And that's because there's a huge cliff of trees towering above this water. When I turn the water to black and white, I want you to notice the value, that means the darkness and lightness of the reflections in the water. Reflections of light and mid-value objects like this cliff and this tree reflect a little bit darker in the water. Reflections of dark things like these big holes in the rocks and these dark spaces in the trees reflect a little bit lighter in the water. And this is usually what happens. Here we can see that this trestle bridge is reflecting a bit darker in the water because it's mid-value. Here's another aspect about reflections that you should know. If you didn't already, you probably did, but they always come straight down. Reflections come straight down towards the viewer and do not go off to the side. However, shadows follow the path of the sun and can go any direction that the sun goes. So once again, we can see reflections drop straight down from the item reflecting, while shadows follow the path of the sun. One other thing you should take note of is that reflected sky will usually gradate from lighter to darker. You can see it here. I took this little piece off from lighter to darker. The reflected sky in the water is darker than the sky itself. And that is a number of reasons. Number one, that light sky is reflecting darker. Number two, this reflection is receiving the sky much higher up in the dome of the sky, which is much bluer, and the water is very deep. And deep water is actually a little bit darker. We'll talk about that in a minute. The tree reflections here are a lot lighter than the tree that's casting those reflections. You can just barely see a change in the color of the water in these tree reflections. But the cast shadows, the shadows being cast off those trees, have very hard edges, very crisp and distinct, and they are in line with the direction of the sunlight. The reflections we're looking at are also distorted by ripples in the water, making them very soft-edged and hard to see. When we're talking about reflections, we need to talk about the angle at how the water is being viewed. Sorry, tongue twist. Here I've put some rocks and water in a little pie plate, and I'm stepping back and viewing it at an angle. And when you see the water at an angle, you see how crisp and clear the reflections are. When I look down deep inside the pan, I'm looking through the water at the bottom, and the reflections are now fuzzy and not clear. We can see this in these two photos I took just minutes apart on the same day of some ducks. The first one on the top, you can see I'm standing on the shore looking out across, and the reflections are nice and crisp and clear. On this one on the bottom, I'm standing on a short wall staring down into the water, and the water is no longer blue. It's kind of gunk colored. It's the color of the algae on the bottom of the rocks, and the reflections are very minimal at best. Depending on the depth of the water and the angle you're looking at the water, you can see what's under the water, what's in the water, and what's reflected on the surface of the water. And depending on the depth of the water, sometimes a reflection can reveal the shallow river bottom by blocking out the shinier rays of light. Here's 9 ideas about reflections on water. Number 1, dark values reflect lighter in the water. I should say dark values usually reflect lighter in the water. Nature can do all kinds of stuff, but this is what normally happens. Light values usually reflect darker in the water. Colors in reflections are diminished in intensity. It means they're more grayed down. They're usually in the same color family as the item reflected, but a little bit less intense color. The reflection of a thing will grow longer and more distorted if the water is slightly choppy. The smoother the water is, the more it's like a mirror image. And reflections drop straight down from top to bottom, while shadows follow the path of the sun. The viewer can usually see the river bottom through shallow water. And finally, 9, reflections are clearer when they're viewed at a distance. Let's look at some other things that create different colors in water, and this is impurities. like sediment, runoff, minerals, algae. Have you ever seen the runoff of a glacier into a mountain stream? It's really beautifully turquoise. There are all kinds of things that can change the overall color of water. Depth can also affect the color of water. When you're looking at bodies of water from above, you can see through the water to the sand or rocks below if the water's shallow. Pure water is clear, but sunlight doesn't penetrate beyond certain depths. Shallow water usually shows the sands, rocks, or plants that are under the surface, but they're generally a little browner or greener than the dry rocks on top. But deep water is darker and cooler in temperature than shallow water. Here you can see my little swimming hole. The shallow water looks brown and greenish, while the deep water looks turquoise. And you can really tell that water is quite a bit deeper. In this image on the left, I'm standing on a high bridge looking down a steep canyon to a very, very deep river. And the canyon shelves along the edge of this river show me just how deep it is. Here, in the shallow water, sunlight penetrates the water and bounces back that soft brown, wet rock color. In the middle depth, the sunlight penetrates through the water, bounces back up, and it looks green. That rock shelf has a greenish look. It shows us that it's quite a bit deeper. And finally, in the deepest water, the sunlight can't bounce back. The sunlight goes down, but it's too deep to make the trip back, so the water is a dark blue-green. Over here on the right, you can see that there isn't any deep water. We can clearly see the rocks underneath, but we can tell which water is shallower and which water is deeper simply by the coolness, the blue-greenness of the water. This is a little creek with shallow water, and the sand and rocks under the water are wet, and they are covered in a grayish-green, gunky algae. So they're darker and somewhat warmer, like a browny green, warmer in color. If you've ever seen Monet's water lily paintings, you'll notice he's got a lot of this gunky green color behind his water lilies as well. But these rocks are warmer in color, browner or greener than their dry counterparts. And in the summer, when this creek dries to a little trickle, all those green rocks will dry out and they will turn as light and white as the dry ones on the side right now. Here are two paintings done by master painters that kind of describe what's happening here. In this painting on the left by John Singer Sargent, we can see that his rocks in the shallows are greenish browny color, but we can tell they're wet. As our eyes track across the water, it gets cooler and more turquoise, and we can tell that it's getting deeper. And finally, as our eyes track across this little pond, we begin to see reflections, which means that we're starting to see out across the water. The same thing's happening here in William F. Reese's painting. The logs appear to be half in and half out of water because half of them is green and half of each log is yellow. And that kind of shows that part of the log is dry and part is wet. These rocks in the shallows are that greeny, gunky, gorgeous brown color. We see the reflections as our eyes track out across the water. So we know that deeper water is a darker color, darker than the sky. And shallow water is a lighter value. Maybe not lighter than the sky, but a lighter value. Here where the water is quite smooth, it's just wet sand, we can see it reflects the sky more accurately. Here where the water is a little deeper and roughened up with waves, it's a little bit darker. And where the waves push the sand up, we can see this brown sand is curling up inside the wave, creating a completely different color in this close wave that doesn't occur in this farther wave. And finally, we're going to look at ripples and moving water. moving or rough water creates a really distorted reflection. Here I took these two photos just in the same 5 minutes in the same place on the Wenatchee River. In one, there's almost a photographic reflection. In the other, a little breeze picked up just a few minutes later. And I took this second picture, and we can see that my beautiful, almost photographically realistic reflection has just been changed to a mess of little wiggly lines. Let's see how that works. There's a whole science to this in physics, and when I looked up ripples on water, I got all this physics stuff, and it was fascinating, and I read through it, and there's particular words for everything that happens. But we don't need to know them right now because it's not important to our painting. But just know when we're looking at still flat water, there is an angle that the object hits the water and reflects back into your eye, and it creates a single image. Here's my shorthand for stuff: a mountain, some rippling waves, a blue sky, and a sun. Now, every time the waves bend towards the mountain, a reflection of the mountain shows up. Where the waves bend towards this sun, a reflection of the sun shows up. And wherever the waves flatten out or bottom out, reflection of the blue sky is going to show. What that means is that you're going to have a whole mess of little rippling images. Here I've made some ripples out of aluminum foil. Of course, water is more complex because it's see-through. You might be able to see the bottom of things, but I just did this so you can see how ripples work. I'm wearing a red jacket. You can see that everywhere a ripple turns toward me, my red jacket shows. It extends the reflection of my jacket. Everywhere the ripple turns away from me, the red jacket doesn't show. Now I'm going to put my orange paint apron in back behind there and take off my red jacket. So I'm just wearing a black shirt. And you can see the reverse is happening. The orange is hitting every wave that's facing it, and every wave that's facing my black shirt is black. And this is kind of what's happening with waves too, but in a much more complicated way because everything's in motion. So how do you decipher this for painting? Well, there's really an easy way. In the background, things are much more simple and small. So in the background of your water, you can simply pick a couple of really common colors and use small horizontal brush strokes to represent that movement. In the foreground, pick the colors of the reflection and use wider, larger strokes and follow the movement of the water to create those larger strokes and the ripples and movement of them. Just follow it along right with your brush. Here again, use smaller horizontal strokes for water in the background and larger, wider strokes for the water in the foreground. This is a painting by British artist John Hammond, and we can see he does this smaller horizontal brush marks in the background, larger brush marks that follow the rippling movement, that follow the movement of the water, and that have more of the reflection in them in the foreground. You can see this again. He's done it in this pond. Same thing. Smaller, more horizontal brush strokes in the back, more color, more movement, wider, broader brush marks that follow the ripples in the foreground. Here we can see the exact same procedure done by Claude Monet. If you look at other artists' artwork, you can see that they have adopted this, just simplifying the background and keeping those ripples and the movement of the water more towards the front. But now let's talk for a moment about moving water, because many people have asked me, they want to do waves or waterfalls, or even to show the current in water. One of the things we want to see is that the water is moving, but it doesn't just move in a straight line. In a river like this, there's all kinds of rocks and impediments along the way. So the water is moving in one direction, but it also curls and eddies back. And that is a good time and a good place to use some brushwork here. But don't make those things white. Make sure that they are very, very softly rendered, and save your white marks for the bits of foam and flecks of sunlight popping on the surface of the water. When you're rendering waterfalls, be aware of the movement of the water and keep your brush moving that direction. But also remembering that the water will eddy and circle back and create ripples. As you're putting your brush marks down, just be aware of the movement of the water. The water itself is flowing in a more organic way. So just being aware of the fact that there are things happening in the water, movements happening. You can keep your brushwork moving and lively as well. And one last thing I wanted to show you before we start painting is that waves and waterfalls, foamy white water has shadows. Look at how dark the shadow is on this wave. Look at how dark the shadow is on this waterfall. Even waves that are backlit have shadows, and shadows give them form and depth. So don't forget about putting shadows in your white moving water. Here are the 9 takeaways for reflections on water. I'm not going to say them out loud. I'm just going to turn them on so you can do a screenshot of them if you want. And to review a few of the other things, remember water reflects whatever is above it, except when you're viewing it at different angles, the angle of the viewer changes how reflections are seen. Deep water is darker and cooler in color than shallow water. Try to be aware of the flow and the movement of moving water. And finally, even foaming waterfalls and waves have shadows. So look for those items as you're painting. Of course, as an artist, you get to interpret what you want and what you want your viewers to see and what you want to paint. These are just ideas that you can follow, but I want you to remember this last thing. Always trust your eyes. What I've just told you are generalities, but nature is full of surprises. Every time you go out in nature, every time you really, really look, you'll see all kinds of beautiful, unusual, interesting things that seem to break all the rules. But nature is in charge, so trust your eyes. I can't wait to get started painting with you. So let's get started. Okay, so just so you know, you don't have to paint along with me. And in a couple of places, because this painting took me longer than my allotted time, I fast forwarded like through the glazing, the very first glazing piece, so that we could slow it down during the painting part. So just watch, enjoy, and have fun and paint it later.
Sounds great.
All
I
right.
just want to point out one thing very quickly. I saw this comment from Susanna, and I just want to shout you out, Susanna. She says, just have to say I'm struggling with painting trees from Monday's session, but I'm not giving up. I'm a new painter. I don't have much experience with trees. So we're proud of you for sticking with it. We know it's challenging, but we're so proud of you for sticking with it. Anyway, let's jump right into this water demo from Diana.
Let's get started. I'm using a 16-inch by 12-inch panel, and I'm just going to start in with a little sketch in ultramarine blue with a number 4 flat brush. I'm using a ruler to make sure this back bit of water is flat. It's a little bit crooked in the photo, and I want to make sure that's flat. I'm going to move this bit of cliff out of the direct corner, just because things that end in the corner whisk your eye out of the page. And this isn't going to be a detailed drawing. This is just a real simple idea of how I'm going to break up the color shapes, where I'm going to put my biggest objects, and what the linear movement will be throughout the painting. I like to make sure in a painting like this that I've broken up the space and that there's some nice balance in here. I don't always sketch in, but when I feel like I might, some shape or form might get out of hand, I really like to just briefly sketch or mark in where those pieces are going to go. They'll all get covered up with paint, so I'm not worried about the color I've sketched in with or anything else. Just putting in those big overall shapes, measuring to make sure each space is a little bit different than the other. I can erase with a little bit of water while the paint's still wet. This is a cradled hardboard, ultra smooth, so my brush just whisks along it really easily. No canvas structure. It's just a preference I have. You can use anything you want to paint on, but I'm just kind of filling in some of these darks and seeing how they connect, seeing how the darks attach to each other or don't attach to each other, and how the viewer's eye is going to move around the page once I get all this stuff in here. I'm going to mix up a few of my colors. The tool I'm using for that is a Catalyst Color Shaper, a #1 mini, or it's also called a painting blade. It's just a rubbery blade. I paint with it as well. But I'm going to start with mixing some colors. The first color I want to mix is this, the color that takes up a lot of the canvas is this beachy color, and it's beige. And I feel like it's starting out, it has a very warm cast to it. So I'm starting out with an orange color. Now I know it's not orange, but this is how I'm going to start because I only have red, yellow, and blue. So I'm going to start with what I feel is the closest. And to me, that's orange. If you see something different, that's fine. Everyone's eyes interpret things in a different way. Now I'm going to add some white until it's the right value. Okay, when I add the white, it starts getting to be closer to that beachy color. I'm not going to need orange, but I am going to need a lot of this beach color. But it's still too bright. And so to tame orange, you can put in the opposite, which is blue. But in this case, I also see in this beach, where it's wet, a note of purpley beige. Purpley beige color. So I'm mixing up some purple, and I'm going to get it the same value as this, or a similar value. Purple, just ultramarine blue and red. And now I'm going to add it just off to the edge. So I have a variety of beigey colors, from purpley beige to browny beige to orangey beige, but none of them are real bright orange. So all of them are going to get a little bit of that purple in them, just to tame them down. There is blue in the purple, and blue will cut the intensity. That might be a little weird color. If I was using ochre, that would be a way to do it, but I'm not using ochre. I'm just mixing a color for these lighter areas, the lighter sunstruck areas on the beach. And then I'm going to mix this purple color with the orange for the wetter areas of the beach. And then I see about midway where it's really shallow, but you can sort of see through. It is sort of a purpley color. So it seems to get progressively bluer. A green wave. So to make green, I'm going to put yellow and blue. That's ultramarine blue I'm using because that wave, oh, look at how bright that is. That is way too bright. That wave is not really brilliant. And what happens when you mix yellow and phthalo blue is you get like a green that is not seen in nature unless you're in the tropics maybe, or the rainforest, I don't know. But this green is still too bright. So I'm going to take a little bit of my orange from the beach and put it just off to the side, not mess up the whole thing. Nope, it needs to go darker. So I'm going to take some red. When you add red to green, that's the opposite on the color wheel. There we go. You're going to make it a little bit less bright. And that's what I want, a little bit less bright. Now I have some really bright blues in the sky. That's where I'm reserving my phthalo blue green shade. Really, really bright. And then a little bit less bright blues in the water. So I'm going to use my ultramarine and put a little bit of phthalo blue green shade in there. And the other thing, let's see, it seems to have a little note of purple in it. So I'm going back over here, and it's also much lighter than what I have it. So I just noticed I just put it like a molecule of red into that to soften the color up a bit. I can add or subtract to these colors as I want to once I've built up my ideas. But now we've got a lot of dark. And so what I'm going to do is take my dark pigments. I don't have black on this palette either. I'm putting ultramarine, phthalo, and red together. I don't know if you can see it way up there, way up high. I've added my dark colors together. That might do it. I may put just a drop of yellow in because that might be too purple. And a drop of yellow is going to make it more black or brown than purple. Let's see. Phew. I have a variety of colors mixed, and I kind of like the way they look together. So next step is here. And my next step is I'm going to tone this canvas. I've speeded the image way up because you don't need to see this in real time. But I've decided to tone the canvas in an orange color. Don't ask me why orange. I just felt like it would be good. It's always just a judgment call. And I'm using a 2-inch wide wash brush and just a little bit of water on my brush. Make sure there's no white in the orange color mixed up from red and yellow. And that's going to make a nice mid value. Now I'm taking a damp paper towel and I'm using it to wipe away where all the lightest values on the canvas are going to be. All the spaces in my picture that'll be a 1, 2, or 3 on the value scale. Now I'm mixing a brown using red, yellow, and blue. And I'm going to use that to represent my darker values, my 6, 7, 8, 9 values on the value scale will be represented with this brown color. This isn't going to be the color it ends up. This is just going to give me a hint or an idea of how, what values I'm going to use and what values I'm going to mix up to represent these spaces, these rock spaces. I like to keep it rather abstract at first. When I start painting, I can cover up any of these ideas and alter them a little bit. So really the whole idea is just to see if this has balance and harmony, if it doesn't feel too heavily weighted on one side or the other, and to see how the viewer's eye will move through the painting, whether it's going to feel clunky or whether it's going to feel really smooth. This is a beautiful beach scene, and I want it to feel really quiet and lovely and harmonious, and just your eye wash up through it like water. So getting these values to look right is job number one. Okay, I'm going to let this set up and dry. Let's see. I think the area that will be the sky is pretty dry. I'm just wiping it down so I can add my first layer of paint. And everybody has a different painting style. And my feeling for my paintings is I want to lay up layers, layers and layers and layers of paint. I'm going to start with this beautiful blue layer. If I have to paint over it to get it right, well, that's what'll happen. I'll paint over it. I'm not worried about painting over top. Because this is acrylic, I can go over and over this. I just took some of what will be my black, added white to it, way up here in the corner, and that's a soft gray. A lot of white. I don't want anything in the sky to be darker than what's on the ground, unless it's a wave or a highlight. I'm going to take just a touch of my yellow, add it to the white, a touch of this orange, add it to the white. So what I add next is a creamier color. And when you lay the paint in side by side, wet into wet, go a little bit more bright color there. When you lay the paint in side by side, wet into wet, you can lose edges. And that means this hard spot between these goes away. And since this painting is not about the clouds are there to enhance the feel of the day, the feel of the way I experienced this day. I am feeling a little bit free to move them around, to soften the edges up. Clouds are soft, and cameras tend to freeze them in action. Clouds are in constant action, and cameras, depending on the setting and how good the camera user is, tend to freeze frame them and make them more hard-edged than they really need to be. So I'm just going to soften the edges of what would be my clouds. And I'll add back a hard edge or two if I need it later on. Right now I'm just keeping everything loose and wet. The thicker your acrylic paint, the longer the drying time. So if you are always having trouble with drying time, you might want to consider adding a little bit more paint when you lay it down. Maybe beige first. This rock I think needs to go higher. So I'll just cover up what I've done. If for any reason I don't like these colors, and they look pretty hideous and garish next to this orange, so I have to cover up the orange in order for me to feel like I know whether I like these colors or not. And with these two, I'm just going wet into wet. And trying to find the pattern. The blue, I feel, has a little green in it too. This blue in the center is not just such a pure, clean blue. It has a little bit of green. I'm using the side of my brush to just scumble a large portion of that. It feels like the wrong color. So here's pure ultramarine and white with just my dirty brush. Off I go, scumbling it in. There's some gray in it. I'll get to my gray, and the gray is light. I'll get to a lighter gray. A little strip of sunlight across a beigey, bluey, green color on this side of the big rocks. A beigey, bluey, greeny, purple color. But one thing I know is it's a little lighter right through here. A little lighter here. It's just light because this is wet. There's light all over the place. Light that sparkles on things. My green from my green wave, and the wave is much darker than the water. It has something in common with the rock. It's more translucent. And this color will look altered again when I put these darks in. And might need to be warmer, so I'm adding some more red. Now, if you find you can't get the right balance, you can always add some black paint in there. I tend to make things completely muddy when I add black. I tend to veer away from it, but other people can deal with black just fine. So if you find that you want to add black to this to give it more power, you can do that. I'm using my reds, my yellows, and my blues. Now often I'll have a palette with more colors. I don't always use this simplified palette. I'm doing this for the people in our group who have never painted before, because it's so much easier just to use a few colors than to use a lot of colors. And you learn a lot more about your color palette and color harmony when you use just a few colors. That's my reasoning for using just these simple colors. And if I find they are not working for me, I'll change them. These ones I'm going to get really dark. And I have a secret weapon to get things really dark. Ooh, that did it. Remember, there's a lit side and a shadowed side. But I do have my secret weapon. I'll go get it. It's a transparent color. You can use quinacridone burnt orange or transparent red iron oxide. Needs to be transparent. Orange and blue are opposite on the color wheels, and when you mix a transparent orange with blue, it's going to allow that to go really dark. There we go. I like that. I have used quinacridone burnt orange for years, and now the Golden Company is going to discontinue it due to they told me supply chain issues. So that's sad. I have to find, but I'm learning to switch to transparent red iron oxide. And there is a reflection in the water that I think is a little warmer. Look how nicely black that gets. And these darks are going to allow my lights to look brighter. I'm just putting some of this color. This is going to be a warmer reflection down here. And I messed up this rock a little bit so it isn't quite so square. To me, it looked like a boxcar fell in the water, so I didn't really want that. Now I'm going to find that dark, but not quite as dark color of the rocks with the light on them. And by doing that, I'm adding that orangey red color to my black and just putting a little bit of this beachy color in. When I look back and forth between the beach and the color of the light on the rocks, I'm seeing the value. I'm trying to pay attention to those two things. It's warmer and lighter, and I will get more detail in here when this dries and sets up. I'm trying to find patches of sunlight, patches of shadow. This one's quite a bit lighter. This is quite a bit lighter. In there, a little bit more purple. I'm going to mix up a little bit more of that purple I had with my brush being a bit on the messy, dirty side. So it's not pure purple, purplish, a purplish color. There we go. Purpley orange, like porridge. This rock needs to be a little bigger. This color is sort of greenish where it comes down to meet that wave. Now, if you don't see the greenish, that's fine. Whatever color you see will be just fine, because your eyes, your art, the more you paint, the more sensitive your eyes become to nuances. I have a lot of people tell me, I just don't see the colors you see. I think that's just fine. You don't have to. But if my colors, once I get them up, make sense, and you say, oh, I recognize that, then just remember our eyes get more sensitized to color the more time we put in behind the brush, really looking at color. This is all still really wet. There's a little bit of lighter color shining right here. Look at how quickly I'm getting a big overall impression. Now for this wave, I'm going to mix up just a little bit more of this warm white. So I have one more degree of white to go, which is pure white. I'm going to add a bit of pinkiness to that. It'll be pure white that I'll have left over once I get this all in here. I'm going to mix up some more real dark with the phthalo and this. Come in at that point down here. Get some dark in here. And I want to lose some of these edges again. Now, while there's still some dampness here, soften some more of these cloud areas. I'll soften some more of these edges. If I like the brush marks, I'll leave them. I don't have to soften everything just because that's what I'm thinking. If I like stuff, I'm going to leave this stuff. And while this is setting up, I'm going to mix a little more color. I'm going to take just a tiny molecule of that transparent orange. This is actually quinacridone burnt orange, but transparent red iron oxide will work. And I'm using my color shaper to drag a texture of color across this. I'm going to mix up a little bit more of my green. And remember, I added some orange to it, so it wasn't quite so green. There we go. Just a slight bit darker. I want to leave some room for my sparkles on the waves. So everything that I'm working on, I need to keep like really a mid-value here, a light mid-value. There's a lot of sunlight on it, but I really want to leave room for my highlights and sparkles. I'm going to mix more, even more of that purpley color, because I need a big batch of it. And I'm mixing it with the orangey color. I'll make some more of that orangey color right now. If you've been noticing that I'm not taking paint right out of the middle of these globs, that's good observation. When I'm done, I'm going to clean that goop off and put these into a airtight container, because I probably won't use all this big glob of paint, but I want it here for me in case I need it. I want to start adding a little more paint, a little bit thicker paint, because then I can get some of my some of those patterns and textures that the water has left in the beach, those moving textures. I'm trying to, as I paint them, I'm just trying to follow along like as if I was touching it. You know, just follow with my hand as if I was touching those shapes. Now, the reflection doesn't just come straight down. The water's moving. So the reflection is wiggling because the water is moving. The other rock over here has some like light stuff swirling around it. And I'm not getting into detail yet. I'm just finding the smaller and smaller instances where we have light, dark, the smaller shapes. I went from overall big shapes to smaller and smaller shapes. That's my little pool of gray. There we go, more gray. But it's a color. It's not just black and white mixed together. This gray is an actual color. I'm going to add it to some of these greens here. There's sort of a silky gray thing happening there. And then a lighter blue thing happening here that I lost. There's a thing about acrylics is that they do dry darker, which is another reason I paint in layers, so I can just add a lighter layer on if my first layer has dried darker. This actually seems like a reflection of the clouds right here. This little moment where the water got really still. So I picked up some of the cloud color to create this lighter moment. And we'll see how that works. I'll switch to another brush, my number 4. I love the thick paint here at the bottom. It draws your eye forward. The thick paint tends to make this stuff look like it's coming a little bit forward, and I like it for that. The paint is slightly thinner in the background, helping it feel like it goes away a little bit. I feel like there's a little blue in here. Not that color of blue, though. That's too bright. Get purpled up a little bit. I'm going to add a touch of this bright green to give this wave a little luminosity. And then I think I'm going to make it a little bit darker underneath, and then there's a shadow. The wave is actually casting a shadow on the damp sand, so there's that. There's a little bit of a light shape at the base in the water. It is, now that I'm into this part of the painting, I'm so glad I set these colors up like this, because I don't have to reinvent how they were mixed, all I have to do is go to the color that's most like what I want and just adjust it a little bit. But I'm not running out because I made big gobs. If you're running out of paint, the paint colors that you mixed, consider next time mixing more. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it's a risk, but art is both those things. Believe me, art is both those things, expensive and a risk. It's a little warmer back here, as if it's running up on the beach. Who knew, right? So when the wave touches the beach, it's creating a little shadow. And the shadow isn't the same thickness all the way around. I still have some things I need to put on here. This is interesting that it's a soft gray because it is a tree covered hill, but it is, you know, in the background. So if you did it green, it would pop right forward and look like it was in your face. Here's some of the reflection of this rock. Oh, this is also buttery and wet. It's really fun to play with this wet paint. Oh, yeah, there's just so many lovely nuancy colors that are coming through now that this paint's all gooping and mixing together. Reflection in here. And I'm just wondering what happens if I let it mix with the wet paint here. It's not going to be nearly as dark because it's mixing. But it might blend and look more like a reflection. There's some, every time I look over here, I see some more movement in these sand colors that I didn't see before. And as long as I can get them wet into wet, they're looking pretty good to me. All right, there's a lot of small bits of this really dark color in these foreground rocks as they turn away from the light. So I'm going to pay a little bit of attention to just the abstract way in which these turn away from the light, and I am going to add, I think they're covered with like some kind of sea creature, like mussels or something. And I may have to go back and forth a few times before I actually get it, because it looks like I'm really messing up here. So that's okay. The more marks I put on here, the funner it gets. The more texture, the more color. So I'm going to be working back and forth between these dark colors and the lighter colors. And then I'll work on this water area again some more. Once I really feel like I have the movement of shadow and light on these hills, the darks. Some of this red I think is just from my camera, but I like it, and it adds something and a little bit of a smaller color shaper. Ooh, now that this paint is drying, the color shaper can scrape designs over the underlying texture, and that gets pretty beautiful. I can actually use the edge of the color shaper to draw if I want to, which can add some beautiful marks. It can also be silly if I'm not careful. By silly, I mean just adding things that are not appropriate to the painting. I'm going to make this rock a little taller so it looks like it's more in the foreground. Get some more of that creamy white color that I mixed before. A little more yellow in it. Now I'm going to add that color to some of the clouds that need a harder edge right up on this top level. And it repeats some of the texture that's below. Careful not to get it too thick here, because I want it to make little marks, not big marks. But tapping it with the edge of the color shaper just puts little dots. These rocks have water on them, and so the water is sparkling too, but I don't want it to get too overpowering and overpower the idea of the waves. And the waves aren't huge, dashing waves. That'll be another demo for another day. Waves do have form, and they have shadows, and they have sparkles, and they create reflections. So there's a lot of things that they do that anything that has form does. So we need to pay attention to the fact that they have shadows. Not just cast shadows, but have shadows in them. I'll get a little bit of shadow, wave shadow going right here, right as that edge of the wave curls over. There's a little shadow in there. And then as it flattens out, as the wave kind of swooshes up onto the beach, that shadow, there isn't a shadow. So the main thing about painting water is becoming really observant about what's going on, where things subtly change. It's not just a giant bank of blue, as we've been talking about. There's all sorts of subtle little changes going on, creating disturbance, making things dark. Usually where the water is the deepest, it's the darkest. So I bet out here, that's why that's really dark. Where the water is smooth, it's most reflective. Where the water is messy and disturbed by wind or waves or swells, it's less reflective. So all of those things, once we start paying attention to them, add up and make what looks like more than just a slab of blue. If you are standing on a high cliff looking at water, or from a far distance, water can just be incredibly blue and not have much variation at all. If you're close up like this and standing on the beach, water has a lot of variation. That's the really neat thing about painting and art, is that you get to decide what you like. Part of finding your own style is simply deciding what you like and don't like, what you want to see in your painting, what you don't want to see in your painting, how you apply your own sense of aesthetic and taste to a situation. A lot of painting is learning the tools that you use, just like any other endeavor. If you were learning to do pottery or glass blowing, you would have to learn the tools. But that should not inhibit your creativity. It should actually help you be more creative once you're comfortable, confident with the tools of your particular art form. Well, for the time allowed, this might be all I can do. We'll see if I can get a few more brush marks in here. The problem I have at this point is that I'm likely to overwork. So what I want to do is not overwork the painting like that or wreck it. I don't want to overwork it or wreck it. I just want to find where I'm fairly satisfied with the outcome before I finish, before I call it quits for the day. And then usually what my process is when I'm painting is I sit the painting out for a day or two. Just let it sit out and I don't look at it. Then I get the painting out and look at it again. And I think, is this what I want the painting to say? Is this what I really like? Do I like the look of this? If the answer is yes, I don't need to touch it. I just am going to put a little coat of varnish on it to make all the colors even, all the shininess parts even, and to protect it. I'm going to sign it. If the answer is no, I'm going to take it back to the easel. I save this paint for a week or two. I don't put it away. I save it. There we go. Darker. Because then I can come back to my mixtures and feel comfortable that I can put these mixtures to use. Fixing, putting my painting. But if I just keep slapping away at this painting, I will do things to it that I don't want to do because I'm tired, because I don't know what else to do. And I've ruined so many paintings by not knowing what else to do to them. And just think if I do anything, it'll be good. Well, that's not the case. What I have, when I get to a point where what I have is something I like, or something I think I'm gonna like, I better just quit. There's still something I don't like. If you know what needs to happen, if you know there's something that has to happen on this painting, go ahead and do it. But if you don't know where to go next, stop, take a breather, step back, look at it, squint, ask yourself the big questions. Do I like it? Usually, for most paintings, we're like, get worried at this point. Like, is someone else going to like it? Does it not meet my rigorous standards for what I wanted to do? All the things, the self-doubts creep in. And all I can say is when you get to a certain point, just drop it for a minute. Just let it go. Step back, look at it, squint, get a drink of water, deep breath, whatever it is you do to get some perspective. Get a little distance. You get too close, you can't see what's important to see. I needed to make that darker, that lighter. I don't feel the need to copy every nuanced detail in this photograph. The need I feel is to find my way to the point where I am pleased with what has transpired on the painting. So I just need to create a little passageway. And, oh, that's still wet. What about that? Fix that right now. And just bring the waves down a hair because this is too even. The color I've been reaching for here is just a little bit of more beachy, but blue at the same time. So I'm just going to dab that color in there. this to a little beachier green in through here. And then the light of this wave is coming more across. And I'm going to get some true white now for some of the highlight speckles. Some pure, pure, pure white. There's a few little sparkles on the other side of this reflection. I am enjoying the color of this sand. I think this rock needs to push back a little bit though. Just a little, needs to get smaller, diminish in size as it goes back in space. Simplify that. A few more little sparkles in this wave. And out along here. Now, I think, okay, I really do this time. I'm just going to call it done.
Wow. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Diana. That's a really fun painting. I see so many great comments here.
Yeah.
How did you feel about it?
I really loved that painting. I love doing it. Sometimes paintings just sort of flow and the feeling around it flows. Sometimes I struggle really hard. This one flowed and I knew what I wanted to do with it. Sometimes my paintings are an absolute just, you know, a boxing match from front to back. And there it's all good learning.
Yeah.
Sometimes you learn more from the struggle than you do from the thing that just flowed. That's more magic than anything.
Totally true. And you guys, I know that there's a lot of information that Diana put into her instructions and into the demonstration. So remember, you have access to this. It's just going to be on the YouTube channel here. It'll be on the dashboard through the duration of this workshop. So make sure you go back if you missed anything. And also, I'm gonna share my screen here and just go through a couple slides real quick, because all the reference photos, the supply list, you can find it here. And I want to show you one thing about here, and that is don't forget the landscape workshop. I just was realizing that my wife mentioned that people have been typing in landscape workshop sometimes and getting to a landscape company. So make sure you type in the landscape workshop and it will take you to the dashboard. This is your homework. Oh my goodness, it didn't get updated on here. Session 2 homework. Choose a reference, either the one that Diana painted from or your own. I saw somebody just mention that they had a similar picture of their own from California, which, hey, that's wonderful. If you have your own, paint the scene with the water, applying what you learned from Diana. Take a photo of your painting and submit your painting on the dashboard where it says submit, and share your work on social media using this great hashtag. And we're here now at the place where we're going to do our giveaway, you guys. So, and right after this, I just want to remind you, stick around because we got a Q&A time with Diana here. So I'm going to see if I can switch over my computer real quick, and hopefully it'll show up with this great, what we call the wheel of names. Let's see if it works. Okay, look at that. The wheel of names is here. Now, this is going to reveal who wins this $200 gift card. So are we ready? Are we ready to have me spin the dial? Let's do it. The wheel of names, here we go. It's coming down to, let's see, hopefully they put in a first name and a last name. Last time I remember some people, oh yes, Anna Singer. All right, Anna, congratulations. You won a $200 gift card, and we will get that over to you. Just make sure that you put your or respond to us at support@acrylicuniversity.com, and we'll get that over to you. So are we ready for the Q&A?
Yep.
I think so.
Perfect.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So I started a couple questions that I wanted to get back to. So Maureen asks, how do you know when to do wet on wet and when to let it dry?
Well, for me, the answer is really easy. I use wet on wet when I use thick paint and the paint is still wet, and I paint over it dry. I mean, the paint dries so fast on the canvas. It's really hard to control unless you've got thick paint. So I just do dry over wet once it's dry. I mean, it's just that easy. If I find it's mushing too much, I wait 5 minutes and it dries. That's it.
Awesome.
How about you, Jed?
You know, I didn't even answer that question. I didn't. I'm sorry. I was distracted looking at comments, so I don't even know what the question was. But I think you answered it great. And people are here asking you primarily. So,
Okay.
but let me just say real quick, you guys, we did finish that video, so it's out there. I saw that comment come through. If you want to get kind of a crash course in acrylics, we just put this video. You can find it on the YouTube.
Yeah, it's on our YouTube channel. It's in the description, and also it's been rolling around here a few times throughout the chat. So yeah, definitely check that out. Crash course in acrylics if you're brand new. Really good stuff. So have you added any medium to your paints?
No, I do not add medium. If I want the paint to stay wet on my canvas, I use thick paint because thick paint dries slower than thin paint. So no medium at all. Everyone's been asking how I keep my paints wet. It's the Masterson Stay Wet acrylic palette, and you have to follow the instructions in the thing. Some people just put a dry piece of paper on and expect their paints to stay wet, and it doesn't work like that. You got to follow the instructions. So do that.
When I'm mixing my paints, I keep getting mud. Can you help?
Yes, you can mix. I mix my paints in a color wheel, and I mixed, if you noticed, I mixed around the color wheel. My purple stayed between my red and blue. My green stayed between my blue and yellow. And that way I can control when I want to get those brown colors, when they go in towards the middle, when different colors are coming together, opposites on the color wheel, they make dirty, muddy, wonderful browns. But if you keep them separated in the color wheel as long as possible, you will stay away from that mud. A lot of people dab colors all over their palette, and there's no way to control the mud.
Yeah. Please, how do you treat wastewater? Thanks. This is so important.
Okay.
I'm assuming they just mean the water from your brush or whatever. Yeah.
Water. I'm on a public system, and I take all the solids. I don't put any solids down my system at all. It's just the liquid water goes into the sink. Every solid comes off my brush and my palette and gets dried out first and thrown in the trash. But when I had a septic tank, I dug a big hole and filled it with activated charcoal and rocks and sand, and I poured that wastewater down the hole rather than into my septic tank because it blocks the bacteria from working.
Okay, how long did it take you to get to the point you are in your painting?
Oh, that's fun. I've been painting for 40 years. I've been painting in acrylics for 25. And that doesn't mean you can't get there faster. I'm a slow read. I mean, some people were saying, you mix colors so fast. There was a time when it took me 8 hours to mix 2 colors that worked together. So I'd mix them, scrape them off, mix them, scrape them off. If you, and all of my instruction and all of Jed's instruction helps bypass all of that stuff. If you're using a limited palette, you're going to have much less time mixing your paints. If you do a little sketch, a little value sketch beforehand, it's going to cut out so much fixing time. So it's just a matter of how much effort and energy you want to put into your painting. That's it.
Yeah, you want to know something? When I was in college, I'd been playing guitar for about 4 years, and I met this guy who'd been playing for like 6 months, and I was thinking to myself, how is this possible that he's way better than me? It was just because he really went at it. So time
Yeah.
is kind of not the best judge. It's really how much effort are you going to put in, and
Yeah.
how much time do you have to dedicate in whatever time you have. So, and the
Yeah.
other thing, like Diana said, we created Acrylic University to help you avoid some of the long delays and trying to figure everything out. I mean, honestly, guys, I've talked to so many people like Diana, other artists who are professionals who, when we had to figure stuff out ourselves because people didn't have instruction out there that was
Yeah.
like, this is how you should approach this, and these are the tools that you should use, and this will make it a
Especially
lot
for
easier for
acrylics.
you. Yeah, especially in acrylics, because
Yeah.
oils have been around, watercolors have been around. People know all the tricks from that, but there's something about acrylics because it's not that long. Now, can I take just a quick second here and show you guys
Yes.
something? Because I saw a question come up that people said, where do I see the other paintings? And I just want to direct you. This is, if you follow the dashboard link, this is the landscape workshop dashboard. And I just added this in here today, guys. The crash course in acrylics is on here. So if you want to see this, you'll always be able to grab it here. But if you go to submit paintings here and you click this button, it will take you to a place where you can see all the paintings that have been submitted. And this is where you can submit your own. So you can look here, you can see, like, look at this. People are already submitting the water one. That's crazy. But maybe they did it before the class. But if you want to get a bigger view, you can see this. You can see what people were working on, and click it one more time. All that to say that this is how you can see what other people are doing and what other people are working on. And you can submit your own painting there too.
Diana uses golden acrylic paints. That's her brand.
Yep.
Can you sign up month by month for Acrylic University? Yes, you can, and we'll have more info about that on Friday. Do quality brushes make a difference? What is the difference between inexpensive paintbrushes from Michaels and the pricier brushes from Blick?
Quality does make a difference, but the biggest difference for acrylic painting is making sure you get acrylic synthetic brushes. Those natural hair brushes are really expensive, made for watercolor or oils, and they absorb water and just turn to mush when you're painting with them. So the acrylic, and make sure they're nice and tight. And the ferrules are strong. The ones that Jed, the Princeton Catalyst, I use Princeton Snap, Princeton Catalyst, and Princeton, what's the other one, Jed? They're all super good. Aspen. Super good brushes. They're a reasonable price. And if you care for them, they don't fall apart. Like cheap brushes will just fall apart. So a reasonably priced brush, but not the expensive hair brushes.
So what is the name of the spatula thing to mix paint? Go ahead, Don. It's just a 1-inch color shaper. You can pick them up basically anywhere that there's an art supply store, arts and crafts store.
They come with, you can find them where you get the brushes. They're just a color shaper or a painting blade. And it's just a rubber spatula. I love it because of the shape of it. It gives you nice straight edges, or it gives you a nice wide strip of paint. You can scrape the paint off or put it on thick. It's great.
Yes. Jed, can we sell our art from the class?
So if you change the painting enough, look, we're not police people, and we're not going to go around, doing this stuff. It's up to your judgment to figure out if you feel like you copied everything that Diana did, or you used your own reference, or you adapted it enough to be able to say it's your own work of art. So listen, we're just not going to be policing that. It's up to your judgment. You probably know the rules if you're asking that question, but it's
Catherine
again.
asks, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna
Not
say,
bad.
if we are members, we'll be able to see the masterclass in like 3 months. Yeah, the masterclasses go into the membership, so members get access to these indefinitely, basically, as long as you're a member.
Mhm.
Um,
This one's hilarious. Could you not tell
I
my
saw that one.
art is expensive and a risk? LOL.
Okay.
Yeah, listen, we're not going to tell them. The thing is, it can be, but it's cheaper than therapy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like to me, it's like, gosh, like art is a really wonderful thing to put in your life, and it's cheaper than a lot of other things. So
Yeah.
you
Cheaper
know,
than swimming, cheaper than golf.
yeah, yeah.
Just put it in perspective.
Yeah, I know. They're a lot more expensive hobbies.
Yeah, right.
Is the paint shaper the same thing as the blade?
Yes.
Yeah.
They just are different names with different companies. So it's just a rubbery tool. So that's it. Some
Do the
people
paints?
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no. Do the paints on your palette actually stay wet?
Yes. Yeah. For
Yeah.
weeks. Uh-huh.
Yep.
This
Yep,
is a
the
really good
exact
tool.
same
That's
mixes.
one of
Yeah.
the that's like one of the things that I think I didn't know right away when I was starting to paint in acrylics, that like open up the doors to paint so much differently and so much better because you have time to go back in and mix.
Yeah.
Mhm. Let's
What's the
see.
purpose of a warm wash under? How did you choose that color? I don't know. I'm Peter. I'm gonna back out of here. I start a bunch, but
Okay,
I'm gonna
cool.
let you just pull them up.
Yeah, no worries.
I chose the orange underwash because there was so much blue and it was a warm, sunny day. And I wanted just a touch of that orangey, warm feel under the colors. It comes out in only a few little spots at the end, but I wanted to incorporate that feel into the painting. That's why I
Mhm.
did it. And it also helped me lay in my 3 values, my light, medium, and dark values before I started painting. So that's it. You can use any color you want.
So we have lots of people ask about like mediums and stuff like that, retarders, stuff to keep your paints wet longer. They don't use any of that. They just use the Stay Wet palette like 99% of the time. Stay Wet palette and the acrylic paints right out of the bottle, or the tube.
Mhm.
I think this is a good question. I need to get
Oh, yeah.
looser. Is there an exercise before you start that anyone uses? And Diana, what do you say about that?
I think looser comes with confidence. The main thing is to paint a lot. And as you progress, you'll take your own shortcuts. Also, to just realize you want to be looser in the beginning, start with a big brush and stay with a big brush as long as you can through the painting helps. But really, looser comes with being more comfortable and confident. And that comes with lots of practice and just getting into the process. Sometimes working really fast helps. Those are a few tips, but mainly just get in there and paint.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think if I could add to that, I always say that confidence will come over time. Like Diana said, confidence will come, but it's really important to start with courage, because just because you're not, you don't have years of painting and you're not super confident right now, doesn't mean that you can't take steps and paint with boldness. It just takes courage. You're going to have to like actually think through things and say, no, I'm not going to let fear be the thing.
Mhm.
So I would do little things too, like get your big brush out and take like some wild color right off the bat. Like don't think it through too much. Like just like kind of get something on there that maybe doesn't feel like it's gonna work with the painting, but all of a sudden you're just gonna be like, okay, I did something, and now it looks crazy. Okay, now what can I do? And you just do things every once in a while that will maybe force your hand towards looseness. Like Diana said, the big brush and all that kind of stuff is really helpful in that. Oh yeah, 30-minute painting challenge helps for sure.
It does.
Do you use a new Stay Wet paper every time, or do you clean it? If you clean it, how do you do that?
Well, I use a new one because I like a nice white surface. I noticed Jed cleans his and scrapes it clean and flips it over, right? And uses the back side. Is that what you do,
Oh,
Jed?
I'll use the front side for quite a while. I'll probably clean it several times because I just leave like the big globs of paint and I'll clean off the middle part where I'm mixing. I'll do that probably a couple times each painting that I'm working on, because I just like to have the mixing section clean at different points of the painting. But then if I need to clean the whole thing, yeah, I'll wipe the whole thing down. Sometimes I do turn it over if I really want to, but you can definitely get more than one session out of it if you're okay seeing the stains of the past colors on there.
Yeah. And for me, I just like it fresh and new and white. So it's just a different style, a different way of doing it, but just scrape it clean. You know,
so
paper towel.
let's go into kind of rapid fire mode here on the question. So let's give each one like 5 seconds or so. So what kind of gloves are you wearing?
Nitro.
Perfect. Let me see.
I love this. Ellen here. My therapist said to return to art. LOL. So I have. Perfect.
Love it. What varnish do you use to finish the painting?
Oops.
Any acrylic varnish you want. Jed, you use spray varnish, right?
Yeah, I use spray varnish at the end.
Cool.
I use paint.
Does it matter?
Yeah.
Does it matter if you mix brands of acrylic paints?
Nope.
No.
How do you store your used wet paints when you're done with your painting?
I think Jed and I both have a little plastic box with lids that I scrape my paints back into that plastic box and close the lid, put it in a Ziploc bag. I got my plastic box. It's a fishing tackle box at the dollar store. And so when it finally, I mean, I can use mine for 10 years. It just keeps going and going. That's it.
Diana mentioned that her video fast forwarded through glazing. Total beginner here. What is glazing?
That was just that underwash, that orange underwash I put on at the very beginning. That's it.
It's literally just taking a watered down version of your color and applying it to your canvas.
I have heavy body paints in tubes. I can't get them open now. Any suggestions on how to get them open?
Well, next time, wipe the top of the tube clean before you put the lid on. But try them under hot water and then bang them on a hard surface for a second.
Hot water, bang them, and pliers.
Yeah, and pliers. Not teeth. Don't use your teeth, please.
Yeah.
I like to start by simplifying a complex painting little by little, get tighter and tighter. I can stop whenever I want. However, I tend to keep going. How do you know when to step away?
Well, I do it when the brush marks I'm starting to make are making the painting less than what I wanted in the beginning, or when I'm really tired. Painting is like a memory of your energy. And if your energy is going downhill and you're getting tired, the brush strokes are going to get tired too. So I stop them. How about you, Jen?
Same.
Yep. Okay.
Do you have to use varnish?
Yeah, you should.
You should. Yeah. It protects.
If you want to preserve the painting. Yeah. Okay, let me see here.
Can the Stay Wet palette be used with watercolors also? It can if you don't put the sponge in, but then you're like basically there's no real reason to use it. I don't think it's worth using with watercolor because you can re-energize the watercolor without that. But I'm
Peter,
not a watercolor expert.
Oh, sorry. Peter, do you paint? A little bit. I do a lot more drawing though. I really enjoy that. Can we paint on our painting after varnishing?
Yes. Just remember to revarnish it when you're done. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. You have to what I do is if I varnish my painting and then I need to do some work on it, I will put on a clear medium to help make everything stick. Explain the Stay Wet palette, please. I'm not going to explain it right here, but if you go to the crash course video, it will explain it for you. Yeah.
So, okay. Both reference photos are on the dashboard, guys. So that is right here. Thelandscapeworkshop.com. That will get you to all the reference photos. And then I have here's a good question for Diana. A couple people have asked, if you don't have a color shaper, what brushes would you recommend using as an alternative? And does it matter that much? That kind of question.
It doesn't matter. It's just a personal choice and it's an aesthetic choice. I like the kind of marks it makes, but you can get a brush that makes the marks you like. You could use a palette knife. You've got to experiment. just get out some yucky old canvases or icky old paper and experiment with brushes and see what you like. That's all it is. And it helps you form your own style too when you decide what you like.
Should you gesso even pre-prepared canvas boards? Correct me if I'm wrong, but if they're pre-gessoed, I don't think you have to worry about it.
You don't need to.
Do you have multiple paintings going at once or one at a time until finished?
Oh, multiple.
Yep.
You should see my studio.
Oh, someone asked. Yeah, that question. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Do you have more than one Masterson palette if you have more than one painting going?
I do. I have 3.
I've never actually thought about that, but yeah, that makes perfect sense, Diana, that you'd have multiple.
I'll answer also. I don't. I'll if I have multiple paintings going, I will just have my one palette out. But that's because Diana and I do things differently, and that's what's interesting about life and art and everything is that we'll have different approaches to stuff. So there's not a right or wrong way. The reason I don't is because I don't choose the colors specifically for each painting as much as Diana might. Diana might have a different primary color, like different yellow and a different blue and a different red, because the scene that she's painting, she's tailoring. If I think, Diana, this is part of the reason. For me, I'll just I'll switch out my colors every once in a while, but I'll usually just switch it out. I'll do a bunch of paintings. Then I'll think oh, I want to paint with different red this time. And so I'll switch out a couple colors, but I'll do sets of paintings with the same colors.
Yeah.
Yep. Can you use too much water in thinning acrylics while painting?
Yes, absolutely. It's a specific percentage, but if you use more than, I'm not sure what it is, Jed, 20 or 30%, you ruin the paint. The binder of the paint no longer works, and all the pigment gets loosened, and it'll act more like a pastel. The pigment will actually just fall off your painting. So I don't add any water to my paint once I get started painting, because I want that binder nice and tight. It holds the pigments in place, and you don't want to thin it.
Anyone else hearing an echo? If you're hearing an echo, you probably have the YouTube stream open, and it's also playing embedded on the dashboard in the background. So just make sure you either close one or mute one or something like that. Dinah asked about, basically what surface are you painting on? Where do you get the board that you painted on, or do you make them?
No, that is an MDF board that is DaVinci Pro Palette Ultra Smooth. You can get it at Dick Blick's, or it's just a really smooth surfaced MDF board, and it's been what they call cradled on little boards that keep it nice and flat, and it goes nicely into a frame that way.
Awesome. Is it all right?
Peter, can I show this real quick?
Yeah.
Acrylic intimidated me till I watched this. When I didn't understand why or what Diana was doing, I closed my eyes, and what I then saw was amazed and added to my understanding of the acrylic process. So I don't know exactly what was going on in you, but I'm glad that it was helpful, and sometimes it can be a lot, like we've said. So if you need to go back and watch anything, that's what it's here for. But yeah, I think if you pay attention, if you get into what Diana is talking about, and you can see her walk all the way through, and hopefully with my painting as well, you'll be able to see things, and hopefully things will start to make sense. What I always tell people who are in a workshop is that don't expect your paintings to be radically transformed during the workshop. What you're trying to do is you're trying to gain information, and you're trying to put things into practice. And a lot of times you don't totally understand, but you're starting to receive information, and it's starting to get stored in your brain. And as it's being worked out in your hands and your skills and everything like that. But don't be down on yourself if it's not immediately coming through in every painting. It's just the process. You're receiving this stuff, and it's going to get worked out, but it'll probably happen over the next bit of time, like the next few days, the next few weeks, and you'll start to see things that make more and more sense.
And that's how it works with any skill, right? Is you expose yourself to it, you put in a lot of time being around it, and you start to understand things, and they start to click over time, not all at once. So is it all right? Oh, go ahead, Dinah. I'll let you add to that.
No, that it's just really true. If you can just gain one thing that you can incorporate into your painting this week, just one, it's a win. If you get
Totally.
3 things, it's a win. So just, come back and refresh your memory, but it's all a win if you can just find one thing that you can use.
Absolutely. Is it all right to have various textures created by various painting tools in one painting?
Anything's all right in art.
Yeah,
It's all good. It's just your aesthetic.
exactly.
And
It's
I
all up
think
to you.
that is actually one of the coolest things in a painting to me is when you see transparent parts of a painting, you see, kind of thinner, opaque parts, and then you see more built up areas. I think all of that adds interest to a painting. So absolutely, I would be 100% yes on that.
I know someone who uses lava soap to clean their brushes. Is there a specific soap that works best or proper way to clean and dry?
I use hand sanitizer. A little bottle of that hand sanitizer. I pour a little in the palm of my hand and wash my brush in that. Everyone has their own way. That seems to get them all the way back to white bristles.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that baby powder thickens the paint. I've not tried it. Do you recommend doing this?
No, I wouldn't. It might wreck the longevity of the paint. I have no idea what is in baby powder.
So a couple people have asked how to keep the lid tight on a stay wet palette.
That's a good question because it seems to like get harder. But for me, I just have to press it down tight and make sure that it's actually connected because it kind of latches on the underside a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard to do. Some people rub it with a little bit of, some sort of like Crisco or something, but I wouldn't do that just to make it slimmer. You don't want to get oil in your paints though.
Yeah.
So I just put it on a flat surface and work from one corner and really, dig in there.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, is there a lesson Friday? Yes, there's a lesson. It's on atmosphere. So come back Friday. It'll be an awesome one. And this question I think is interesting. How important is the quality of the expensiveness of the paints? So like if you go through the crash course, Diana, I know, has always used Golden primarily, and Golden doesn't even make a student grade paint. They're just artist quality. So you'll never have a low quality Golden paint. But some of the brands of paint use, they'll have different varieties. One will be a student grade and one will be the artist grade. And the difference is the amount of pigment that they put in it. And it's way the professional grade paints are better, and you're paying for the pigment, the extra pigment that's in there. And the reason it's helpful is because it will cover better. The paints will actually cover the canvas better and cover other colors better. And but I would say this is what I said in the crash course, and if you need, just go watch that. But the 2 colors that I think are especially important, at least in my experience, were white and yellow. And I would add orange in that if you're actually trying to buy an orange. But the student grade paints, the quality of the yellow and the white and if you get an orange or something, like, it's so bad that it would frustrate me for hours trying to cover something.
Yeah.
But the artist grade paints, they're so much better to cover over with, especially with those colors. And so if you didn't have money for all the paints, I would at least buy those colors in artist grade paints and get student grade paints in some of the other ones that are like more earth tones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's this question. Is it better to paint your canvas first, or does it depend on what you're painting?
Do you mean put a color underwash?
I assume so, yeah.
I think it's just depending on how you feel about it. Some people, it's like a writer who types a bunch of gobbledygook before they start writing. It just covers the white page before you start. For me, I use it to create a 3-value tonal system. And some people use it to unify the colors. but it's not important. It's not necessary to do. If you like the white surface, use the white surface.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing. It totally just depends on your process. I like to cover the canvas generally because I don't want white to come through at the end where I don't want it. So it's easier in a way just to go like, okay, I'm just going to cover the whole canvas with something and then paint over that. But sometimes I do more of what Diana's talking about. Like I'll draw in the design and then I'll do some washes of values and colors where they're meant to go. And that'll kind of be the undertone, but it'll also kind of correlate with the painting. I wanted to show, dang, I have this one. Oh, look at this, guys. I think this is such a good comment. You are teaching so well and giving details and skipping over the minute. I don't know what that means exactly, but
Minute.
you're giving. Oh, what that mean?
Skipping over the minute.
Oh, okay. Oh, the minute, the minute.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I don't understand this, but the minute. But you're giving us depth in what you're teaching. Thanks so much. And I know everybody who's here, Diana, would say the same thing. Thank you so much for your teaching today. I think we should be done with our Q&A now, just because we have, you guys need to get painting. We'll have another session on Friday. You can come back and ask more questions for sure. But
and we'll also be talking about our membership on Friday. So for those of you that are interested in that, definitely that'll be really cool. So
yeah, absolutely. We only open up our doors of, like we have a very limited time period that you can actually come inside of Acrylic University. So this is going to be one of those time periods. And why we run these workshops and master classes and things is because we want you to know who we are, understand what we're about, and get a picture of what we do before you ever have to say, oh yeah, I'm willing to, like make a commitment to that. And the thing is that we do things in such a way that we also really believe in giving away stuff. Like we've all been given a lot. And so we know that some people will never, they're like most of you, I'll just be honest, like most of you are never going to join our membership, but we're glad to be able to offer good teaching to you so that you're like able to take as many steps forward as you can. And like, that's just part of who we are. We just want to be able to do that because we believe that each one of you is creative and you have like this amazing ability and we want to help you. And for some of you who are going to come and say like, hey, we love this and we want to be part of this, this is going to be your opportunity. And the next, we'll start that on Friday. We'll open up our doors and that'll be your chance to come in and get take more steps, just like, it's going to be awesome. I don't need to talk about it now, but anyways, we're excited about that. And I hope that you'll join us on Friday for Atmosphere. It's going to be awesome.
Awesome. All right. Is that it?
Yeah. Diana, thank you.
Thank you.
Again.
This has been so much fun. And I want to thank everyone out there who has such a generous spirit and who have really been trying hard to absorb this stuff. Thank you.
It's a lot.
So much. I appreciate all of you.
And Peter, thank you for making everything work and running the program. We can't do this without you. So
yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you Friday. We love you. We believe in you. Happy painting.
Bye.
Bye.